Today's teardown begins with the traditional opening of the beer. And today it is Firehouse Nut Brown Ale from Lake of the Woods Brewing. They started off in Kenora, Ontario. They opened up a location within walking distance of one of my offices in Winnipeg. And that's where I got this monster can filled. Calling it a monster can may not be the right name. They call it a crowler, which is, I guess, a play on can and growler. The bartender actually filled this can and used a press to crimp on the lid right in front of me when I ordered it, which is pretty cool. Today's Dare Down is a small little one, and I hope it's a little bit interesting, but if it's not, well, so be it. At least I got lots of beer to drink. This, some of you may recognize as a pedometer, a step counter. These things are pretty common, or at least used to be pretty common, as sort of an advertising freebie, and that's what this one was. It has a little screen, it has a reset button, and it has a tab to isolate the battery. So in case you haven't encountered these things in the age of Fitbits and your phone counting your steps and stuff like that, this is just a little device that you clip onto your belt, and as you're walking, it's supposed to count your steps. There we go. This one's not all that sensitive. But there, it seems to be counting. And you push and hold the reset button, and it resets to 0. Very simple device. This is a little bit fancier than some that I've seen because it's got a little clamshell that closes on it. Normally they're just sitting open. But the interesting part, I hope, is inside here. All you got to do is figure out how to get in. I'm thinking that I just pop it out of the case that way. Oh well. Okay, so there's the battery compartment popped out anyways. Oh, and we have a couple of screws. Okay, let's start there. 1 and 2. So theoretically, you could replace the battery in it. I've never seen anybody use one of these things long enough for the battery to wear out, but whatever. There we go. So that is just the case. Don't need that anymore. Here is the little mechanical bit. So we have a long lever here with a little weight on the end of it. We have a hair spring here, and we have 2 metal pins. So I'm guessing that when this toggles between those 2 pins, where's the electrical connection? Is it the spring maybe? Is that what counts? Yeah, it seems to be. So it's not using any kind of accelerometer or anything like the modern devices use. It's just using this simple little mechanical bit. Now then, a bunch more screws to take it apart, and we will see what's in there. Is it a blob chip, or is it something interesting that we can actually look at? Are there any other bits of circuitry in there for driving the LCD or anything like that? Place your bets. I'm gonna hope that it's something interesting, but for something that gets mass marketed so heavily to, to businesses as a freebie, I'm gonna guess it's pretty cheap inside. Does that do it? No, there's one more screw. That's also the screw that's holding this little mechanical bit in place. So I'm gonna lift that off there. Now then, is that the piece that's making the electrical contact? Oh, it's stopped working. It is that little hairspring making contact with the bottom pin here. So that's toggling it. Okay. I suppose that makes sense because the pivot is entirely plastic. And that's not really held on there all that tight. It's just twisted around. Anyway, what do we have on this side? We have the reset button, which is just a little resistive carbon bit on the button that presses across the tracks. We have the battery holder, which is horribly crusty because that battery is ancient and almost dead. And we have the 2 pins. We have pads that could have held a couple of capacitors. We do have one teeny little resistor in there. 105, 1 a 0 and 5 more zeros. 100 meg resistor in there. Oh, and there's a little capacitor up here as well that is actually populated. Then there's the LCD, which looks like it's got a little bit of mounting tape or something on the bottom, and one of those Kodo zebra stripes, or zebra stripe, depending on how you want to pronounce it, up there. And then we have, yeah, as I feared, as I expected, the blob chip. Okay, so how this little zebra stripe works, it has a whole bunch of vertical columns inside it of conductive carbon, and insulated from each other, and the pitch of them is narrower than the pitch of these pads down here, significantly narrow, so that it's not possible for it to short out. So any place that you put it down, one or two of those tracks is going to be touching each of those and conducting up to the top part, which makes it a really easy way to connect two sets of tracks together. And then on this LCD, ooh, that's hard to see, but I think you can just make out the individual little pads on there, which are again similar or pretty much the same pitch as they are on the circuit board, but much wider than the traces or whatever they are, the conductive bits in that zebra stripe. And those are just formed onto the glass, similar to all the conductive bits in the front of the LCD. Not much to see in there, and unfortunately, but predictably, not much to see in there either. Well, that was moderately interesting. Kind of an obsolete device, though. Like I said, pretty much every phone these days has an accelerometer in it, which can count your steps, or your smartwatches, or your Fitbit-like things. But if you wanted to build something like this of your own, there are a few modules that come in the standard Arduino starter kits that you could do it with. Starting with this little guy here, which is very similar to this actually, or at least very similar to the sensor part. This thing that looks sort of like a capacitor is actually a metal cylinder with two little posts or contacts in the bottom of it and a little ball bearing rolling around inside it. Listen to this. Hopefully you could hear that little ball rolling around in there. So it's just a little switch that makes and breaks every time you bounce it or change it this way. You can also use it to tell if your project's upside down or right side up and things like that. Super simple way of doing it, and not that much different than this little mechanical way. Another piece that shows up in a lot of the Arduino starter kits is this little Mercury tilt switch here, which can also do the same thing. Old school mechanical thermostats used to have these in them. It's kind of rare to find these days, although I did get, like I said, an Arduino starter kit a little while ago that comes with one in it. And I think you can see in there that there are two electrical contacts, one that the Mercury blob is stuck to right now, and one up here. And when you tilt it, the Mercury blob moves, so now it's only contacting one of them. You drop it down to the bottom here, the Mercury blob is contacting both of them. So that's another way that you could do it with a microcontroller. But by far the highest tech way would be to use an accelerometer or what do they call an IMU, inertial measurement unit. And this little chip here does pretty much what it says. It can tell you when it's got some inertia in X, Y, and Z directions. And it can also tell you what its orientation is. So you can read basically any of those to tell when it's in motion, and if you've got it clipped onto you physically in one orientation and your program sees it going that way, you can be fairly sure that you're making steps. That particular one came out of a Pi Pico beginner kit, but here's another Arduino beginner kit that has a 3-axis acceleration or accelerometer in it. This particular one's a 6-axis, but they are moderately common to find in Arduino kits as modules. Or you could build some cool little mechanical bit yourself with and balance the spring out and stuff like that if you wanted to. All in all, a neat little device that served a purpose for many years of keeping people up on what kind of steps they're taking, keeping them honest, I guess. I suspect the modern ones in your phone are going to be more accurate. This one even says that it's got a plus or minus 10% deviation in accuracy, and it dares to call itself an instrument. Anyway, that was fun. Didn't get through very much of my beer, and I've got a whole bunch left that I got to get through before it warms up and goes flat. So, thanks for watching. Questions and comments down below. Do you remember wearing these things? Yeah, let me know if you have any amusing stories about them, I guess. Yeah, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later.